Hello, I'm Portia Parker Griffin, and I want to welcome you to the Career 101 podcast, a place for ambitious professionals and seasoned executives who want an edge in their career. We're talking about all of the things you were never taught or told when it comes to career growth, development, and change. Now, let's get into it. Hello. Today we are talking about Resumes 101 with Wynter Love. Wynter Love is the Career Services Manager and a Senior Resume Writer at Fly High Coaching. She is a current member of the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches and a previous member of the National Resume Writers Association. In addition, Wynter holds certificates in human resources management, motivational interviewing, mediation, and teaching with technology and distance learning. She has 15 years of experience in employment consulting and transition coaching. In her previous roles, Wynter has collaborated with United Way of America to create and facilitate employment workshops for veterans, and has spearheaded leadership initiatives to train over 100 student mentors on a college campus. As a military spouse, Mrs. Love understands the importance of capitalizing on job search trends and is constantly on the forefront of cutting-edge ATS technology. Wynter attended the University of Georgia and attained a Bachelor of Family and Consumer Science, and she has a Master's of Education with a concentration in Adult Education and Training from Colorado State University. Hi, Wynter. Long and informative bio there. I love it. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. It's so funny to hear everything laid out like that. I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah, you've done a lot in your career, Wynter, and I'm excited to have you with us today, where we're going to discuss Resumes 101. Right. But before we get into that, I wanted to know just a little bit more about you. So I want you to tell me about 7-year-old Wynter.
7-year-old Wynter. Gosh, I guess I was like a typical 7-year-old, just outside playing with friends. I did always have a book in my hand. I think that's where my love of storytelling and poetry came from. But yeah, I'd say I was definitely an average 7-year-old running around causing problems in my own way.
Okay, poetry, storytelling, all of that relates to what you do today. That's interesting. So when you were running around with these books, Wynter, what did you want to be when you grew up?
At 7, I don't think I had an idea. I didn't really know or figured out what I wanted to be or attempted to until it was time for college. It's crazy how times changed so quickly from there. But I wanted to be an astrophysicist.
Ooh.
Yes. I started the University of Georgia as a physics major and quickly changed after a semester or two. That was interesting. But yes, I was deeply in love with the stars. And I even did a full presentation in high school on pulsars. And I could go on for days. Don't let me bore you.
No. One thing that we'll share with the audience is that Wynter and I were in AP physics class together years ago, and I didn't even know about this astrophysicist aspiration that you had at the University of Georgia. So I'm learning new things.
It went deep for a good semester. I was in deep. That chemistry class came around and
Well, it sounds like you might have shifted a little bit to some other areas, but tell me about your first job, Wynter, since you figured out the astrophysicist part, I guess, around college. But what was your first job?
My first job was actually at the movie theater at AMC. The local mall opened up, and it was the newest attraction in town at the time. Gosh, 15, 16, 20 years ago now. But yeah, so I was at the movie theater. I always was interested in interacting with people. So retail, customer service always intrigued me. I always wanted to jump in and be with the people. Before then, with your family, you do jobs like that. So I had opportunity to be a production assistant at one point in time with friends and family. And we had friends who worked in nonprofits. So I volunteered a lot. So it was always people centric from there.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. So what did you do at the movie theater then?
Everything and nothing at the same time. Teenagers are, have the best fun at their first jobs. So it was all about, making sure everyone was good. It was definitely my first introduction to professionalism in a way that I didn't expect it, you could say. So, it was a good introductory job, though. I would say that every teenager should try and find a corporate job when they first start out, their version of corporate as much as they can.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us about some highlights or pivotal moments in your career, Wynter.
I think about my career and how much things have progressed so far. And it's interesting because I am a military spouse, like you mentioned in the bio. So I'm constantly moving, I'm constantly transitioning. So it's not a easy pipeline for my career, the trajectory that I've chosen. So some highlights are the populations that I get to work with. I enjoy working with the veteran populations that I came across. Like you mentioned with the United Way, I worked with nonprofits, so I did a lot of case management and engaging with that population with the job searching, apartment hunting, and things of that sort. But then I really, really enjoyed working with foster youth at the college. So we moved again, I had opportunity to work at a community college in California, and we got to work with the foster youth population there because it's huge. It's such a huge population in California, and just helping with that transition to adulthood, transition into their careers, their resume writing, introducing them to a resume. A lot of foster youth, a lot of emerging professionals have never crafted a resume. Honestly, may have never seen an executive resume, so they don't know what to attain to. So yes, that was a lot of fun helping that transition from there.
Yeah, yeah. And so it also sounds like, Wynter, you've worked with a lot of different types of professionals and students, from different walks of life, and seen a lot of people in different career fields and at different kind of levels in their career.
Yeah, absolutely. I always get excited when I come across someone who I haven't seen in the industry that I haven't seen before. So I look for those type of people. I really want to experience something new in that regard. I want to problem solve in a different way. So I'm always looking, always eager to meet professionals, maybe in industry that I haven't had a chance to explore, or even to learn more about industry. Program manager in education is not the same as a program manager in supply chain. So, those dualities and that difference is interesting to me personally. And I think that projects into my writing as well as interview coaching.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. So, Wynter, when you think about your career, what would you say has been your biggest career challenge so far?
The challenge is with moving, the challenge is knowing where to start over again. With the depth of my experience, I immediately jump into management roles, but that may not necessarily be always the case, depending on the location, depending on the climate, the culture climate. It just depends. So that's been a challenge for me, knowing when to jump in, when to jump out, honestly, because that's a part of strategizing as you grow your career, as you learn. I found that contracting and entrepreneurship is a completely different beast, and taking on that mindset is interesting in itself. And even when we do have clients who are entrepreneurs and they want a resume to either sell themselves for a new opportunity, venture opportunities, or they are jumping back into the workforce, it's just interesting to see the shift that entrepreneurs have to take. And then, how I can relate it back to my own personal journey. So the challenge has been in the moving, the fluidity of my circumstances. Outside of that, you take it as it comes and you move with it, and it being opportunities, it being the ebbs and flows of business.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure that gives you a great perspective, Wynter, as you're looking at clients and looking at their resumes and hearing them talk about their career or position themselves in an interview.
Yeah, and even if you consider the region that they're in, the same advice that I give to someone who is in the New York area may not be the same type of advice that I give to someone who's in San Diego. You have to take into consideration what the local area needs outside of, a lot of people jump to salary. I want to be, I want to be at this point in this location, give it to me. Well, so in certain locations, the climate is different. Maybe the interview may be different. The company may want to do group interviews in this climate, in this area, where it's one-on-one in a different one. So, you kind of prepare clients for where they are and meet them where they are so that you understand where to go from there. Because what's the point? What's the point if you don't know what you're doing? If you don't have a plan, if you're not strategizing to the best of your ability. And my goal is to make sure that I'm giving all of the information to my clients so that they have an option. That's one thing I want to make sure the clients have an option to choose, where they want to go and how they want to approach certain things. How did that answer your question? I feel like I drifted off a little bit in my mind.
No, I think that was great. So how did you get into writing resumes?
I think back, and I think it was honestly, I needed a resume for a job, and my friend said, me too. And we both got the jobs. And then from there, it builds. My friend brought me a resume and I got the job. So you write the resume, you give me a job. And it kind of builds from there. And before you know it, you have your own little portfolio of clients that you consistently work with through the years. My best friend will come back to this day. She's about to apply for new jobs. She's like, it's that time again. And I'm like, all right, I'll go into my files and get your latest resume, because it just happens that way for friends and family naturally. You want to be of help. You want to be of service. I think a lot of resume writers naturally have a gift of gab, or, way with words. So, my reading started when I was younger. But then, when I was younger, I used to do homework. So, middle school, I was selling homework.
All right. So you've had
selling homework on a larger scale.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It sounds like you've had multiple writing businesses, Wynter, in your career. So why do you think a resume is important?
I think a resume is important on multiple levels. For yourself, first and foremost, you are able to succinctly see what you do. I think a lot of people on a day-to-day basis don't know what to do, what they do specifically, don't know what they do that add value to their role. Everything that you do adds value. And when you have that resume, you're able to see it in plain form and you're able to quantify that. So that adds not only confidence to you, but then confidence in your work and then confidence to ask for that promotion, the courage to seek out those executive roles. So you want to know for yourself first. A resume is also important when you don't know how to explain what you do to someone else. And that sounds like so simple, but a lot of times, if you aren't in a position where you can see yourself, then how are you going to explain it to someone else? And a resume just helps refocus, relines it for maybe your mentor, maybe for your supervisor. If you're looking for other roles, of course, for the recruiter or the hiring professional, but it's definitely positioning you for your confidence and to step out for yourself first and foremost. I just suggested to my sister, she has no plans on moving on. But I said, but when's the last time you updated your resume? Because it's been 5 years and I know you're not doing the same thing. I know you're not doing the same thing. So definitely update your resumes just for yourself. So you know what you are doing. So you have that confidence going forward and in your work from there. That's the first thing you say.
Yeah, very well said. Just a lot of reasons why resumes are important. And to your point, resumes really help people when it comes to that confidence, right? Seeing what they've done on paper and, being able to talk about it. So how have resumes changed over the years, Wynter?
Oh, where do we begin? As stylistically, resumes have changed. the relationship of resumes and technology has changed. The resumes and relationship with hiring managers and recruiters has changed. I feel like every time I get on and read a new article, the time that a recruiter or a hiring manager looks at a resume gets smaller and smaller. I remember 10 to 15 years ago, they say you have 45 seconds to make an impression. And I think the latest one says 8. And I'm just like, wow, that's different in itself, just the approach to resumes. Because the industry is flooded with resumes, I think it is important to know that the industry is flooded with resumes. And if you are being strategic, like I mentioned before, then going from point A to point B won't seem as daunting. And those changes that over time that has been made don't feel as a barrier as you go forward. So what I've seen change is keywords. The language has changed the most, new keywords.
So that's a great point, Wynter. Why are keywords on a resume important?
Keywords on a resume are so important because it helps to realign what the person is looking for as well as yourself. It also helps to optimize the actual resume. So when you're encountering those applicant tracking systems, those keywords are the first things that are going to help to organize and categorize your document for the hiring manager or the recruiter or whoever the end user is. So those keywords, if you don't have anything else, you should have keywords, so you want to make sure that the keywords are relevant to your industry, but also relevant to the job postings. Companies use their own language all the time. So making sure that those keywords are infused throughout your document, as well as relevant for the industry, is just important overall, and for your LinkedIn account as well. So it crosses all documents for your job search.
Yeah. So what is an applicant tracking system, or ATS?
ATS, Applicant Tracking System, is a platform that is used by almost everybody now that helps to filter out resumes. So it's a way to categorize, and I like to say put case management functions on your resume. So if I apply to a position through this platform, it will read it. It will say, well, this person scores, depending on the applicant tracking system, because they're all different. That's my disclaimer. But an applicant tracking system could say, this person scores a 55 out of 100 versus a 35 over 100. We recommend that you interview this person before you interview this person. And then the end user will have the opportunity to review your documents from there. So it's just a way to filter out all of the surplus of resumes that are coming through for the most appropriate applicants to go in and interview from there. And it's heavily contingent on the content on your documents and its readability. So you want to make sure that formatting is consistent. Those keywords are there, like you mentioned, and then your accomplishments do bounce out, because at the end of it, a human will read it. It won't stop at the computer. So yeah, the applicant tracking system is really important.
Yeah. And one thing that I mentioned to a lot of our clients as well is that what happens a lot of times is, if your resume doesn't have a certain score on it in the applicant tracking system, then the ATS is just filtering your resume out before a human being in HR or recruiting ever sees it. And that is something that I think a lot of people are not aware of. More people are starting to learn about it. But, when I talk to, prospective clients and other professionals, one thing I hear a lot, Wynter, is they say, well, Portia, I've applied for 100 jobs or 50 jobs, and I haven't gotten any positive responses. What's the problem? And generally, when I look at their resume, to your point, they just don't have enough of those right keywords in the right frequency. So the ATS, the applicant tracking system, is just filtering them out. So that's definitely a big reason to, I think, work with a professional firm to help with your resume.
Absolutely. And I think to your point with the frequency is something that a lot of people don't take into consideration. That frequency is important. You having management on your resume 10 times bumps up you on the list versus someone who only has it 2 or 3 times. So what are the ways that we can infuse management into your document without it being overwhelming or without it seem like we're just throwing it in like it's just a fishbowl of words rather than storytelling and the progression of your career, telling it appropriately. So, those two minor details in itself make a huge difference, the before and after, especially with our executives, I've noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of executives and professionals want to know, what should a resume look like?
It should look simple. It should look consistent. It should have those keywords that we talked about. It should have easily identifiable accomplishments. And I know saying all these things sounds so much easier said than done, right? But these are the things that are consistently missed. A lot of people are like, well, grammatical errors and punctuation. And yes, absolutely. You want to present something polished. Absolutely. But if the content that you're presenting isn't in line with the job description that you're looking for, if it isn't in line with the internship, with the program that you want to apply for, then it's not serving you in the best way possible. So stylistically, yes, it needs to have those things so it can be read. But at the end of the day, the content also needs to be solid as well. So we want to see, those actionable items. What was the situation? What is the action? What was the result? So a resume should have all of those things, and it should feel like you. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's something hard to say, but you should be your resume should be the most professional representation of your career, right? But it shouldn't be foreign. You should be able to speak to it as naturally, maybe not in formal language as presented, but definitely casually. It shouldn't be a surprise between, the personality and the paper.
The Career 101 podcast is brought to you by Fly High Coaching, where we help our clients soar to their full potential. More and more professionals and executives are setting out to achieve their career goals. But without the right support, it can be difficult, if not impossible. Whether you need career coaching, interview coaching, or a professional resume, we're here to help. Check us out on our website, fly-highcoaching.com. Yeah. So how do you help people decide what should be included on their resume?
It is definitely to make sure that everything is included, or help professionals decide what to include on the resumes. We really want to make sure we're taking into consideration what their job targets are, as well as where they are currently. But really, their job targets will set the tone for the document going forward. If there is a professional that wants to transition to a different industry, the approach would be completely different than if someone is transitioning from the military. And so when we meet them where they are, we can really hone in on what skills we need to pull from them, as well as the job description. I feel like I need to give an example here because that's just so ambiguous, right? You say, yes, pull from the job description. But if I were to give a specific example, I can mention project management specifically. We have someone with the Six Sigma Green Belt, and they attained it through their education as well as an internship. Well, instead of just putting Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, let's talk about the project that you got that certification with. What were those process improvements? How many people were on your team? Did you have international students? Did you have international team members? All those things are important because that's all relevant experience. Well, how can we pull out those specific details to meet the needs of the job description, as well as to represent you as you are?
Yeah, I think that's a great example. Another example that we see a lot of, Wynter, I think, with clients is those clients trying to move to the next level, right? So they might be trying to go from an individual contributor or staff level role to a management role, or from a management role to a director level role, or perhaps director level to the C-suite. So those are, I think, are some changes also that might require differences in their resume. So how might you approach that?
That approach is very much, I would prefer to have a conversation with you, because a lot of times when you are transitioning to a higher level, that means that you've shown that you have that capacity. So what are those examples that you've shown that you have those capacities? What are those special projects that they brought you on unofficially? What are some opportunities that you had maybe when your supervisor or the manager was away and you had additional responsibility? All those things can be highlighted. Your leadership skills don't have to be surrounded by supervising your team members or supervising other people. Mentorship is leadership. Classes that you have, trainings that you have, opportunity to take at your company or outside are leadership. So what are different ways that we can explore what you feel is true? And then we can elevate your document from there. When those type of candidates give us what they intend, those job descriptions, it's really important that we hone in on those keywords and those key phrases, because sometimes project management on a document isn't as impactful as managing projects. And that in itself, how would a professional know that? Well, with our management and our more executive job descriptions and clients, we can see those differences in the language and we can incorporate it into those documents. I'm not sure if just a professional by themselves would know the difference between the two, or know the importance of using those two different approaches. So sometimes it's a combination of keywords as well as the action items that you include in the document. And that's a really long way of saying, call me.
Yeah. It's definitely a lot sometimes. And one thing I hear from a lot of our clients is they say, well, I just don't have the time to do this. And that's when they're starting to really get how nuanced this whole process is. And to your point about just that phrasing, right? Managing projects versus project management, these types of things are not necessarily common knowledge. And to your point about the phone call, Wynter, I also say to people, don't beat yourself up about this. It's not common knowledge. Most people don't even know, these different tweaks that should be made. And I sometimes say, hey, really only nerdy professional resume writers and career coaches, and I'm a self-professed nerd, so it's okay. But really know this kind of thing. And sometimes a lot of people are beating themselves up because they think, hey, I should just be able to write my resume. And, I do well at work. I did well in school. Why is my resume not working? And they spin in that for weeks, months, or years before thinking about getting some assistance, right? And so I just bring that up in case anyone is having those thoughts as they listen to Wynter talk about these different tips and tricks with the resume. Something else, Wynter, that comes up a lot that I want to ask you: how can people incorporate their own style with their resume?
Style is sensitive, right? It's tricky, it's personal. Usually with the resumes, you're trying to be professional and succinct, and you don't want to lead anyone to discrimination, as I would say. But there are opportunities for you to infuse your personality, to infuse your style, whether it's a simple design. I did have a client who was like, well, just put some orange in it. I just want orange somewhere. Well, that, can be confidence boost in itself. Or it can be an approach to your content and your professional summary. If you consider yourself to be or recognized for how you communicate or how you lead teams, then we could create a statement, or you can create a statement, can be created that can lead into that doesn't sound generic. So, an articulate communicator can be translated into something like, on the spot, Wynter, can you get something? An articulate communicator? I don't know. Come back to me. I'll come back with some juice later. But, it doesn't have to be, I don't like to use the word robotic because that's the approach that a lot of job descriptions have, right? That's the language that resume writing is presented in. It's not robotic, it's resume writing. But there's ways to infuse personality in there without completely overriding the professional aspects of it. Another way to infuse it outside of that professional summary is to talk about any special projects that you have, any community involvement that you have. If you are a archer, maybe you're an award-winning archer and you go on retreats twice a month. And then maybe a part of those retreats, you are in charge of inventory. We can put that on your resume. That's adding to your personality, but it's also infusing additional keywords that we can put on there. Your accomplishments, your achievements are different ways to add personality to your document as well. A lot of times when you have those awards or achievements at work, a lot of people don't put that on their resume. Well, you're now an award-winning, customer service specialist. That's powerful. Why wouldn't you want to put that? You're an award-winning program specialist. You're an award-winning consultant. That is a tongue twister, Ms. Portia. Uh-huh. But those are different ways that you can infuse it to show your ambition, to show your personality, to show your passion without compromising perception.
Yeah. So what are some of the biggest mistakes you see professionals and executives make with their resumes?
One of the biggest mistakes that professionals and executives make are definitely the format that they use. What will count you out 10 times out of 10 is a format that an applicant tracking system cannot read. And that is usually something that involves columns. If it's a full page of 2 columns, I got bad news for you, friend. That's not going to serve you well. There may be some systems that are able to read it or able to organize the information so that it's readable, so that it can be categorized. But most often than not, those 2 columns are the first sign that your resume needs to be redone, because the system just is not reading your documents, is not reading it accurately, and it's just not being read. So definitely, if you have those 2 columns, please consider updating your resume to a simpler format. And simple doesn't mean boring. It just means that the system will be able to read it almost all the time. And that is what you want to happen. If you're applying for those 100 jobs to those 50 jobs, like you mentioned, you want all of those resumes to be considered. So it ups your chances of getting that interview, getting that call back. A lot of times, some professionals, now there's a difference also between, what is absolutely wrong and then what's preference. Resume writers are humans too, and resume writers have preference. I like to say this is a faux pas, but I also know this is preference. References, don't put your references on a resume. That's giving out personal information. And I've heard some hiring managers, some recruiters say that that's an instant like turn off for them, that, you are basically ripping up any opportunity for confidentiality by putting that on the resume and giving it out to the public. So that's a big no-no on my book, but I do believe that is a faux pas in general. But there are also things like the overuse of verbs. That sounds so nitpicky, right? But if you have that you worked or you handled or you collaborated 15 times over, you're missing an opportunity to really add pizzazz to your document, to make it more dynamic, to add more content, to add a variation of content. And I think that is another thing that stops a lot of our professionals and executives, is that the repetition of their roles and their responsibilities. Well, how can we acknowledge that you've done that? We don't need that over and over and over. And if we do need that, then how can we switch it up so that is more appropriate going forward?
Yeah. So it sounds like formatting challenges, listing references, people's personal information, and definitely that redundant word choice. Those are some major mistakes. So I want to segue a little bit now, Wynter. What is your definition of career success?
Career success, from my point of view, I think that's important, is that from everyone's idea of success is going to be different from their point of views. And what has helped me hone into my point of view is honestly talking to people, to networking, learning more about the different types of roles helps me redefine what success looks like. And honestly, right now, success looks like me helping people and not going to sleep stressed. I want to make sure that I'm doing everything in my ability to make sure that the clients that we have are successful, that they feel that they are seen, that they're validated, that they're confident going forward. That is success for me. I don't necessarily have a goal at this moment for my career because everything is fluid right now. COVID has done a number on a couple of things. But what I do know is that if I'm not doing anything else, then I'll definitely be resume writing. If I don't do anything else, then I'll be helping clients, helping people, helping family attain what they want, how they want it. And if they let me, then it's in my power to help them. Then yeah, that's what success looks like for me right now.
Wow. Wow. That's very powerful. Very powerful, Wynter. So, how do you think executives and professionals can get an edge in their career?
Oh, you want to edge in your career? Then you have to talk to your peers. Did that rhyme? Maybe. What I mentioned before, that networking is important. A lot of gatekeeping is happening. And without that knowledge share, you don't know what to look for. You don't know what to expect. You don't know what your options are, So the first thing I would suggest, if you're looking to move on in your career, progress in your career, if you're looking to transition, even if you're looking for a lateral change at a different company, is just to talk to people. Well, what has been your experience in this role? And then how does it relate to me? And then also know that people are speaking from their own perspective. Take everything with a grain of salt because people will project on you. And, especially if you're giving them opportunity, if you're asking about them, just know that you're giving yourself the opportunity to learn, and you're learning the good, you're learning the bad, you're learning what you may not even think is important until 10 years later. But give yourself space to learn, give your self space to network, because that knowledge is invaluable. I learned more from talking to, someone in a different department that had the same job title or rank than I did from, talking to HR, to my supervisor. And that's just because people want to share, and you need to open yourself to listen from there. And even if it gets to a point where, well, the people around you aren't providing information, then go search for a coaching service like Fly High Coaching. Go search for, another employment firm. They always have those free consultations. They always have webinars. There's always opportunities for you to learn more and to get outside of the silo that you may have put yourself in. When you want to break away, a lot of people feel closed in, feel boxed in. They don't feel heard or seen. And the one way to jump out of that is definitely to reach out and talk to people. I've even gotten on Reddit threads and just read from other people's perspective, because something may be so simple that you're just missing because it wasn't given to you, and it can be the world of difference. One certification could change your whole life. But how would you know? Would you know about that certification if you don't talk to people, if you don't, do a little bit of research, if you're not intentional about your career? So I say one thing that professionals, executives, students, entrepreneurs can do to get ahead is definitely network, definitely do research. Try and get other people's perspective, and then take it with a grain of salt. Everything that you read doesn't need to be set in stone, but I do think it needs to be taken under consideration.
That is Great advice, Wynter. Great advice. You touched on a lot of things there, and I hope people caught it all. But to one of your points about networking and sharing information with peers, that's part of the reason why we started this podcast, is because there are just so many things about your career and management of your career and navigating your career that are not taught in, universities or, within companies or different organizations. So I absolutely agree with you there. What are your thoughts on work-life balance?
That's impossible.
And why is it impossible, Wynter? Tell us.
Because we are humans. Everything has ebb and flows. You need to flow with work, life, everything like water. There is no work-life balance. You know what you can control? You can control yourself. You can control how you react to those ebbs and flows of life. There's never going to be a time where it's 50-50 or 60-40, and that's not even taking in consideration, economic disadvantages, class disadvantages. Like, we can go on for days and days and days. So no, I don't subscribe to a work-life balance. I subscribe to a Wynter balance. What does Wynter feel? How can I balance myself so that I can tackle these tasks? Because if you position yourself as work-life balance, then you'll think of everything in terms of work and life. Well, no, I want to think of everything in terms of Wynter. What does Wynter feel like? Is Wynter too burnt out to work? Where's her life? And then where's her activities to support that? Well, and then if work is going awry, well, what are the processes that are in place? How am I examining, how am I reacting to the situation rather than to the work that's coming in or the life that's coming in? I can't control the work and the life that comes in, but I can control my reaction to it. So, I think that was a very, almost spiritual answer to that, but really I really don't subscribe to work life, especially being in the military and seeing how the lack of work-life balance is there. I know that I want to be a little bit more intentional from my end.
Yeah. A word that I've heard you mention a couple of times during this conversation, Wynter, is flow. And it sounds like you definitely go with the flow and think about your flow as needed. So to kind of wrap up, Wynter, I want to know, what have been the two biggest lessons or, most important pieces of advice someone is giving you in your career?
For my career, I think what I've learned from first my mother, because my mother is the first professional woman that I've seen. What I learned from her is to figure it out. Don't come and ask me nothing unless you attempted to figure it out yourself. And while that can lead to some problems, I do attribute to a lot of my success from my gumption, my willing to figure it out. I want to know. I'll call myself nosy, but I'm a problem solver. I've had a previous employer call me an all-purpose cleaner. If you want something fixed, send Wynter. And on some regards, I like that. I enjoy that. That does give me fulfillment, but it doesn't always flow with my work-life balance. So, but definitely that bit of advice to attempt to try first before you give up, or before you ask others for help. Try first, because sometimes in that trying, you learn just enough to either push through or to ask a more appropriate question. So that is definitely the first thing. Another thing that I learned, and I've had to learn this recently with all the moves that I've had, and I mentioned it before, is to take everybody's advice with a grain of salt, because they are speaking from their own perspectives. I've had supervisors, managers attempt to push me in a direction, and I'm like, but I'm only going to be here for 3 years. Like, you can't change. You can't let someone attempt to change what's going on in your life because of their perception on your anticipated success. Does that make sense?
It does.
Right?
It does.
You don't want to change yourself from the potential that someone else may see in you, because at the end of the day, you need to see the potential that you see in yourself, and working towards somebody else's goal is not going to fulfill you. So I learned that most recently, that I need to, what does Wynter want to do? So what do you want? You have to ask yourself. And that's all a part of the coaching, the professional transitions, and all that stuff. You have to really examine, do emotional inventory is what I call them, and see, where are you? What do you want to do? And what advice that has been given to you, is it impacting you? So yeah, just touch base with yourself and know that people are people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Wynter, you've shared a lot of wisdom and insights with us today. I'm sure our listeners can take some of that and use it to spruce up their resumes, and then they can take some of it to think about the flow and
Right?
taking things with a grain of salt in their lives. We appreciate you being with us today and talking with our audience and our community.
I appreciate you having me. It's always a joy, always a pleasure talking with you.
All right. Thanks, Wynter.
Thanks.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of the Career 101 podcast. I hope you have at least one key takeaway that you can use in your own career. Until next time, here's to your success.